when you got broken infrastructure, when you got contamination, when you got all these other issues going on, it takes more than that. But I agree, it's very much that's a crucial part of the equation, which is why the stakeholder engagement, you have to have all three of those. You can't just do two of them. You can't leave out that human capital.
Hello, Storm.
Jonathan.
The renewal engine. If you could spend a few minutes there. In the philanthropic and other support sector, there's a culture of funding predetermined outcomes, programs. Mm-hmm. The renewal engine that you're describing, you fund a process, a kind of organization that identifies projects, programs, initiatives. Mm-hmm. There's not a culture of that in many communities. They fund outcomes versus the predetermined outcomes versus the process of identifying new opportunities. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, actually, that's another one of my favorite subjects is differentiating between process and products, and not to beat Chattanooga to death, but a great example there, Chattanooga and Bilbao, Spain. Okay, they've got several things in common. Both of them came back to life from near-death experiences. And both of them are primarily known to people around the world because they built iconic buildings on a waterfront brownfield. In Chattanooga's case, it was the world's largest freshwater aquarium. In Bilbao's case, it was the Frank Gehry-designed Guggenheim Museum. Both cities, like I said, came back to life spectacularly. The downside of this is that with some encouragement from the architectural community, people were encouraged to think that it was the buildings themselves that brought the cities back to life. A friend of mine, Glenn Murray, the former mayor of Winnipeg, Canada, labeled it irritable Bilbao syndrome. And you have an example of that in Tennessee, where Memphis took a look at Bilbao and Chattanooga, and they said, ooh, iconic building on a waterfront brownfield. That's what will bring Memphis back to life. So they went to their waterfront, they cleaned up a brownfield, they stuck a big glass pyramid on it, and it's a white elephant. You know, the pyramid's empty and the neighborhood around it is dead because they focused on the product. They tried to buy revitalization. It's a consumer approach to revitalization. Buy a stadium, buy a convention center, buy something and it'll make you revitalize. They ignored the process that those cities went through to get to that point. So that's what a renewal engine does, is provide that ongoing 24-hour a day, 300, well, it doesn't have to be 24 hours a day, but 365 days a year. Momentum towards revitalization. So it's not a stop or start process. And that's what it takes to bring the investment to town, because that's what inspires confidence. When a community keeps on revitalizing, keeps having successful projects for months and years on end, that inspires confidence, and that is the ultimate money attractor. There is nothing that an investor desires more than confidence in the future of what they're investing in. They don't care what kind of condition your community's in. You know, all they care about is what direction is the value going to go in after I buy some of it. So that's why you have to focus on this process and not rely on any particular, deciding that one particular outcome is going to be the magic key. There is no magic key. There's a magic process that needs to keep on going. Community revitalization shouldn't be something you just address when things are bad. It should be something you do for the rest of eternity.
The new president of the International Union of Public Transportation made a comment a couple of weeks ago that sort of sounds like something along the lines of what you're talking about, and I like your comments. He basically said that any transportation project should begin with the pedestrian and walking, and it'll come out fine after you do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering if you have any comment on that.
Oh, yeah. All my favorite cities are pedestrian-friendly cities. In fact, I was talking to some folks yesterday about waterfront redevelopment. They were asking me, is there any one thing that makes the difference between a successful waterfront redevelopment and a failed one? And, I deal with waterfront redevelopments all the time. And, it didn't take me too long to realize that if I had to boil down to one thing, it was a continuous pedestrian walkway right along the water's edge. Had to be continuous. I've seen so many cities like Toronto. Toronto's got the world's largest urban waterfront. And they didn't retain that public access along the water. So stop, start, stop, stop, start. They've been spent the last quarter century trying to revitalize that waterfront, but they can't do it because they need that continuous flow of pedestrians along the water's edge to tie it all together, to get the momentum going. You look at the opposite, which is Baltimore, and they've been expanding that pedestrian walkway from the inner harbor in both directions. They've got this huge U, miles long now, and anybody who buys property that's connected to that pedestrian walkway, either present or future planned, knows they'll be successful because you need that. It provides that flow I was talking about before. But pedestrian access is also key to quality of life. And being able to generate good commercial neighborhoods and all that sort of thing. I mean, cars ruin quality of life. I mean, but you can't get too religious about this stuff. For instance, if you bring people downtown, if you got a dead downtown, everybody's shopping in the big box stores outside, maybe you should offer free parking. Okay, but the trouble is people get really rigid about these things. They say, okay, free parking is the key to community revitalization. But what happens is that when you get to a certain point, when you've got the people coming back downtown, your stores are back, your commercial activity is back, eventually that traffic's going to build up to the point where it's no longer a fun experience anymore. And now you need to shift away from free parking, start charging more and more and more for it to cut down on the traffic. So these things all flow. The strategies flow. Everything evolves. We've got to get away from templates and just stick to the basic process of revitalization.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland Forum, we have been listening to Storm Cunningham, CEO of Resolution Fund, LLC. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.